This program documents actual homicide investigations. Criminal charges are often dropped or reduced, and all suspects shown are presumed innocent unless proven guilty.
Melvin was a peaceful person, and he always looked out for his family members. Melvin just felt he's supposed to see after his cousins.
It was a high-pitched scream that curdled your blood. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Anyone that feels they've been wronged, they want it to be made right. And sometimes revenge is the path they choose.
It's a cycle of going back and forth until someone either dies or someone gives up.
His act was an act of revenge. What she did was an act of justice.
She got the case solved after 30 years.
December 28th, 1983. It's a little after 4 a.m. when a family in Detroit, Michigan wakes up to banging on their front door. It's their neighbor's teenage daughters, Melissa and Yvonne Kuntz.
I remember Melissa coming in the house, screaming and crying. She was hysterical. And my mother was trying to calm her down to get the story out, and she just was saying, call the police.
They allowed her to use the phone where she called 911 and informed them that an attack was going on in her home.
13-year-old Melissa explains that she was awakened by strange sounds coming from the bedroom of her cousin, Melvin Weathers.
She said she heard a thump, like somebody was falling out of a bed, and it immediately woke her up.
She heard muffled screams coming from Melvin's room. She heard noises as though objects were being tossed around. The telephone line seemed to be dead. Her mother told Melissa and Yvonne to hit the floor. They knew that that meant to get ready and get out of there. She wanted them to go next door and see if they could get help.
Melissa was scared and traumatized.
911 advised her to remain where she was because it would be very dangerous for her to go back into the house. 911 requested the police and medical assistance.
When authorities arrive, they have no idea what has happened to Melvin or what awaits them inside.
My cousin Melvin was born in Georgetown, South Carolina. Andrew Weathers was his legal name, but we always known him as Melvin.
He was an active, happy little kid. He was fun. He made us laugh all the time. And he was just a cheery guy.
Melvin had a large family in South Carolina. He had his mother, his father, and in addition, 3 brothers, 3 sisters.
Melvin also had extended family in Detroit, Michigan. He visited them so often growing up, it became like a second home.
Fallon Park in the 1980s was a city that was middle class, working people. It was a fun place to live, fun place to work, and fun place to interact with each other.
The neighbors and some of his friends that he met while he was here, he was accepted more than in the South, because in the South it was very racist.
He played chess with my cousin. They would sit on the porch and play chess while us girls would run around and ride our bikes and skate and stuff like that.
After his mother's death in 1981, Melvin left South Carolina permanently, moving in with his cousin Louise Kuntz and her kids in Detroit. He took a job working in his Uncle Henry's auto repair shop.
He was a mechanic's assistant, rotating the tires, changing the oil, things like that he knew how to do. So I would say that he was moving in the direction that he wanted to. as far as his career goes?
His hopes was to one day be able to secure a position in one of the big three. Chrysler, Ford, General Motors was booming back at that time, and that was aspiration of a lot of people.
So I think he and my mom complemented each other in that aspect.
Louise, unfortunately, had experience with less kind-hearted men. So it was nice to have a positive male figure in her daughter's lives.
My mother appreciated the fact that Melvin was able and available to watch after us while she worked the various shifts at Michigan Bell. She knew she had the comfort of somebody that she trusted, somebody that was family and had our best interest at heart.
Over the next 2 years, Melvin became an integral part of the family.
He was surrounded by people who enjoyed him, who were happy for him to be there. He had gotten a job doing something that he loved to do and had hopes of moving even further, working on cars and working in the auto industry. So he had a promising future.
But now his family and his future are both in danger. Within minutes of Melissa's 911 call, police arrive on the scene. Louise and her daughters are waiting for them outside with the neighbors.
It was just chaotic at the time. Lisa knew that Melvin was hurt some kind of way. She was wanting to know, was her dog okay? It was just unreal for me as a child. I didn't know what to do. I just froze. And I couldn't console her being a kid, but I was just to let her know that someone was there with her.
They saw Louise in front, and she described to them how her cousin had been attacked and was still upstairs. And then they entered the home. The responders noticed that the power was out in the home. There were no lights, and the whole thing was dark.
Despite the risk, Louise and Melissa followed the officers back upstairs to check on Melvin.
So they would have had flashlights looking around. They would have been making sure that the perpetrator was not there.
I remember sneaking back into the house as I was creeping up the stairs, and they kind of shined the light. I so happened to look to my left. And there I saw the glacial stare of my cousin. My mom saw Melvin, and she just lost it. And there was a high-pitched scream that curdled your blood. It just didn't seem real. It was an out-of-body experience that I felt that I was going through. That this was a horrible nightmare. Oh my God, what is going on?
Melissa Kuntz and her mother Louise have followed police into their pitch-black home, where they find 28-year-old Melvin Weathers stabbed.
His eyes was open and he's looking back at me, and he's dead.
Melvin was obviously dead with a knife sticking out of his chest.
They believe the killer is long gone. Thankfully, Louise and her daughters were not harmed, but the family dog is missing.
The puppy's name was Snow. He was a white dog. So the police officers, they immediately start looking around.
They need to get the power back on.
And the police asked my mom, where's the fuse box? And she told them that it was in the basement. I was holding on to the back of my mom's shirt for dear life as we was trying to maneuver through the house to go to the basement so that they could turn on the lights. The police officer noticed that the fuse box was tampered with, and the lights came on.
There in the basement, investigators discover how the killer entered the home.
We hear this rustling sound. We all look to see which direction the sound was coming from. That's when they noticed that the window was cut out. They was like, I remember the officer said, that's how he got in.
But where is the dog?
The police officers looked in the washing machine as well as the dryer. So then they finally discovered the freezer on the other side of the basement.
When officers opened the freezer,
my reaction to seeing the dog being pulled from the deep freezer, I was happy that he was alive.
they believe the intruder put the dog there to prevent it from barking and waking up the family. Upstairs, investigators find other bizarre evidence that shows the killer had planned carefully.
They find a pair of loafers that had sponges attached to the bottom, assumingly so that family couldn't hear noise as the perpetrator walked through the house. They were thinking that this could have been a home invasion or robbery that went wrong until they were able to look more closely at the evidence.
None of the drawers were pulled out as you would find in a standard robbery. There were no signs of anyone going through the drawers or closets and ransacking the place.
They also found a set of knives on the steps in the house.
Detectives also determined that the knives on the stairway were sourced from the kitchen right there.
In addition to the fatal knife wound in Melvin's heart, he'd been stabbed several times in the face and neck.
They also saw a pillow that was filled with blood, which led police to believe that that pillow was used to place over his face, try to smother him, possibly while he was being stabbed.
The intensity of stabbing a person in the chest, and also the idea that the power was off and that the phone line had been cut, it was more personal. It was a personal attack.
Given all the evidence that the police found that night, they pretty much assumed that they were working with a very calculated, dangerous individual who had premeditated to come into the house and kill the whole family.
To find out why, detectives asked Louise and her daughters to walk them through what happened that night.
On the day of the murder, we were in the bed asleep. I slept in a room with my mother. My sister had her own room. Melvin had his own room, and his door was closed. I heard Melvin call out my mother's name and could hear a struggle that was going on at the same time, and we all jumped up.
Louise tried to turn the lights on in the bedroom, and she immediately noticed that the lights would not come on. For a single mother of two, and the children waking up hearing muffled screams, that would be extremely terrifying.
I was afraid for my life at that moment, and I know I needed to get help. That's when me and my sister tried to go call the police. I recall my mother telling us, tell the police that someone died and they'll come quicker. So as we were saying this, we trying to get out the stairs. So you get down the first flight, and then it's a little corner, and you go down the second part. Right there, when we get to the second part of the stairs to go out the door, I see the shadow that's in front of me, and I could smell this stench.
Melissa says she instantly recognized the shadowy figure because she only knew one person who smelled like that: her mother's ex-boyfriend, Bosco Lyles.
Bosco had this combination of his body odor and the cigarettes that he smoked. So I was able to say for sure that that was him. I felt like I was in a horror movie, like right before, the killer is right before you. And it's a paralyzing fear that you feel that at any moment, if he turned around, I'm dead.
For people living...
There are over 1.5 million home break-ins every year. A third of them happen at night while the residents are asleep.
For anyone who has experienced a home break-in, it is a paralyzing fear that you have. Is one that would make you feel disbelief that someone invaded your personal space, and to be able to dwell in your space is a fear that's undescribable.
Isn't surprised. She tells investigators he's been harassing the family since their breakup a few months ago.
William Lyles was known as Bosco. He was from Highland Park. He served in the armed forces and he worked at Chrysler.
My mother was legally separated from my father and she was going through a divorce. So she started dating Bosco right after he got out of the service. He presented himself as a family-loving man, someone who loved children, who loved to be around children. So she thought that this would be a great opportunity for her to find love again. My mom and dad divorce was finalized on September the 11th of 1978, and soon thereafter he moved in. He would do things like take us out on a picnic. We'll go to the movies, we'll go out and eat. I like to call that like the honeymoon phase.
But the honeymoon didn't last long.
He changed. He wasn't that little quiet person that came in that she thought was gonna be a big help. Bosco's real personality came out.
Before Bosco moved in, we had an open family relationship. You could talk, it was okay to laugh, it was okay to smile. You could have fun, you could play with your toys and do things like that. Once Bosco moved in, that dynamics changed completely. He had a vision of how he wanted a family life to be, and he expected us to conform to his way of thinking and acting and behaving. He was very much of a neat freak, control freak, and very much of a bully. He picked on people that he knew that he can get away with picking on.
He started demanding, I would say, the girls to do what he wanted and how he wanted to be done. And also, like for Louise, he demanded her paycheck.
Louise tells police Bosco also became increasingly abusive toward her.
He would push her, slap her, hit her with a fist, and he would demean her in front of the children and in front of other people.
And this is the kind of senseless abuse that she endured and that her children witnessed over the years of being with Bosco.
Louise invited her cousin Melvin to live with him, hoping his easygoing nature would help diffuse the tension.
He was not a big guy, he was not muscular, he was not a tough guy, but she felt that a male presence may serve as a deterrent.
Melvin was, how would I put it, was he timid, like a real peaceful type guy.
Melvin would take us out on walks just to get out the house and so we wouldn't be exposed to it. Because Melvin was just as afraid of Bosco as what we were.
Louise explains to detectives that the situation continued to spiral out of control. Then one night, Bosco sexually assaulted her in front of her daughters.
We were in the den when it started off. My mom had the TV volume low, and she was trying not to disturb him. He came downstairs and he was motioning for my mom to come upstairs with him. My mother said no. He picked her up and was trying to carry her up the stairs so that he could have sex with her. And my mother kept telling him no. She put her arms out to block herself from being able to go up the stairs. So he threw her on the living room floor. I ran upstairs to get my shoes so I could run out the house. When I came downstairs, what I saw was my mom had her hands over her face, but you could see the tears streaming from her eyes. She was laying on the floor in the living room. And he was trying to spread her legs. And I saw this fireplace poker. And I struck him over the back. And it was like he turned around and I could have swore I saw Satan himself.
Melissa Coons tells police how when she witnessed Bosco Lyles trying to sexually assault her mother, Louise, she stopped the attack. At the time, authorities did little to help.
Back in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of laws to protect anyone against domestic violence. Police would come to the house and they would want to separate everybody, cool off for a period of time, and that was pretty much it.
Afterwards, her family took matters into their own hands.
When I shared everything with my grandmother that has happened, she was disgusted. She was outraged. She was furious. And she called my Uncle Henry. My Uncle Henry was a protector of the family. And Bosco didn't mess with my Uncle Henry because he knew that he didn't stand a chance. Bosco thrived on knowing that somebody wasn't gonna fight back or that he can overpower them. And Uncle Henry wasn't like that at all.
My brother Henry packed up Bosco's items and they was kicking him out of the house.
So when my Uncle Henry came to the house, Bosco so happened to be at the house. Eventually, Bosco went down to his mother's house.
But Bosco didn't get angry at Uncle Henry.
Bosco went around telling people that the whole source of the problem between him and Louise was Melvin.
He didn't want to accept that things was over, and he chose to blame the person that actually was the least culpable for everything. He could not accept that he was responsible for his own action and the demise of the relationship.
He wanted to get back at Louise. He wanted to get back at the family. And he picked someone that he thought he could kill.
To detectives, the family's story fits the evidence. Bosco has both the motive and the means to carry out his threat.
The house was pitch black. It was dark, but the person who had committed this crime was able to move about as if they knew the layout of the home without bumping into anything. He knew that there was a dog that was kept in the basement, and the dog could possibly alarm somebody that he was in the house.
Detectives at this point are thinking that Bosco is the prime suspect. They began looking for him. They enlisted the aid of tracking dogs to try and track and see which way he had gone.
Police dogs pick up a scent from the attacker's shoes left at the crime scene. It leads them directly to Bosco's parents' house.
There were 3 men in the home: Bosco, his brother, and their father.
They instructed them that whoever the police dog went to was the one that they was going to detain for further questioning.
And the dog indicates by sitting next to a person that they are looking for. And the dog indicated on the socks that that male had on. It turned out to be Bosco's brother, Bobby Lyle.
Police are surprised by the unexpected turn of events and take Bobby in for questioning. In the interrogation room, Bobby denies any involvement in Melvin's murder. He claims he's been asleep in his bedroom all night.
He wasn't able to really give any explanation as to why the canines led to him, other than he indicated that he felt like he was being framed. He stated that he had been at home, asleep that night. He did recall or remember somebody kind of messing with his feet and his socks being removed.
Authorities have to consider the possibility that Bosco set his brother up by putting the socks he wore during the murder on Bobby's feet as he slept. Investigators eventually decide Bobby is telling the truth.
He did not have the motive, or he did not know the layout of the home well enough to commit that crime.
But by the time they return to question Bosco, he's already gone.
They detained the brother, which gave Bosco enough time to get away. And that's what he did. He went on the run.
I believe that Bosco picked Melvin as his target because he probably felt like Melvin feared him just as much as Louise and the girls. So he was an easy target for him. He didn't think that Melvin was going to fight back. This murder was revenge, continued terror, to show that I'm still in control, that no matter how many men you move into this house, I'm going to continue to control the house, the family, and the situation.
Walk with me.
Less than 48 hours have passed since Melvin Weathers was stabbed to death, and the man investigators believe is responsible, Bosco Lyles, is now on the run.
Detectives obtained a search warrant to search Bosco's home, and when they do that, they find a diary that has details of what Bosco may have planned to do to Louise and her family.
I believe he wrote 24 times, "Louise, I am going to kill you." And then 7 times, "Louise, you are dead. Louise, you are dead." He had an entry saying that I'm gonna kill Louise, comma, her new so-called man, comma, Melvin, comma, and whoever else is in the house.
Based on the evidence gathered so far, the court issues an arrest warrant for Bosco on charges of first-degree murder. But he continues to evade capture.
In 1983, it would have been much easier for Bosco to run away. There was no social media at the time. Cell phones were just coming on the scene. It would allow a person to be more anonymous, say, than now.
For my family, it was very frustrating to know that the man who actually committed this crime is not behind bars. It was a sense of panic and fear that he could come and retaliate at any time to finish off what he started.
Years pass with no new developments, and the case goes cold. Then, in 2001, a natural disaster complicates any further investigation.
There was a tornado that hit the city of Highland Park, and all of the physical evidence that was associated with the case was now destroyed.
Louise Kuntz never gives up hope that her cousin's killer will be brought to justice. But those dreams are dashed in 2007.
Louise, she passed away before the case was solved.
While going through Louise's belongings, Melissa finds an article about the murder in her purse.
That felt like it was a sign. I felt that I had to complete what was started years ago, and that I was going to personally seek justice for my family, as we were longtime victims of this diabolical monster for years.
At that point, it has been more than 2 decades since Melvin was killed. Melissa decides to go back to college and earn a degree in criminal justice.
The fact that all this time has passed and nothing has been done with Bosco propelled me forward to continue and motivated me to make sure that I understood a portion of the law and be able to work within it to help me.
In order to attack a cold case, you need to constantly be on top of it. You should always be looking, always trying to find information, always researching. And Melissa checked all of those boxes, and she never gave up.
After graduating in 2011, Melissa reaches out to detectives about reopening the case.
I remember sitting at my desk, and Melissa called. She began to pour out this tale of the murder, what had happened, and I could feel her resilience and her determination to get this case resolved.
I felt as if he could hear my story and feel that little girl cry, feel that all the emotions of that little child going through the things that we had to witness, that justice would be served, that he would be able to bring closure.
I tried to impress upon her, let me do the legwork and the looking around. You just keep up with the paperwork and that end.
I called the city of Highland Park courts to see what information that they had. My name was on the original list of the people who was in the house on the original warrant.
The court clerk listened to her, took the information, and went in the storage room and actually found the original warrant that had been issued for Bosco.
That means investigators will once again be able to arrest Bosco, if they can find him. Melissa searches real estate records looking for names of former associates and discovers there is a Lyles now living in Oak Park.
When I got the address to where the Lyles family was living, my intent on going there was to find out if anyone of the Lyles remembered the incident. I just wanted to ask about and find out any information I could about Bosco. When we arrived at the address, we pulled up almost in front, and there was an individual sitting on the front porch. We approached, and I remember that individual looking at me with a very strange and perplexed look. I told the individual why we were there, and I asked him his name. He said something very generic, like Joe Jones. And I said, well, sir, you live here? And he said he was visiting from Mississippi. And that struck me as a bit odd. Looking at his age, I thought he might be Bosco 28 years later. So I asked the individual, I said, well, sir, could we take a picture of you? And he agreed. And we sent the picture to Melissa Kuntz while we were standing there. And in a couple minutes, Melissa sent a text back. She said, it's been a lot of years, but that's him.
After almost 30 years, Melissa Kuntz has made good on her promise to get justice for the murder of her cousin, Melvin Weathers. With her help, investigators have finally caught up with this elusive killer, Bosco Lyles.
Upon seeing the picture that Detective Thomas sent to me, it was like, oh my God. I was in shock that he found him. I was shaking uncontrollably, and I was filled with emotions like, oh my God, you finally got him. He looked like he aged at least 50 years, and he looked horrible, but you could tell it was him. He just looked like he'd been through hell.
Police arrest Bosco and charge him with first-degree murder. His trial begins in January 2013, 28 years after he allegedly stabbed Melvin to death. But with the physical evidence from the murder long vanished, there's no guarantee prosecutors will be able to get a conviction.
At trial, some of the investigators that worked on this case were not subpoenaed. Most had retired, some had died, some could not recall the facts of the case, and for that reason, they were not asked to testify.
Instead, the state focuses on Bosco's motives and history of domestic abuse.
Bosco had threatened Louise many times and some other family members. And neighbors had seen Bosco threaten Louise and seen acts of physical abuse that he committed in front of the house outside.
I knew of the constant phone calls. I knew the constant terrorizing of him driving by our street. So I knew that fear.
Bosco's own words in his diary suggest he wanted to kill Melvin and Louise, and he knew his way around the house well enough to break in and do it.
Bosco had lived at that house. He knew where the electrical panel was. He knew that the knives were kept in a butcher block in the kitchen.
But the strongest evidence against him comes from Melissa.
Melissa's testimony at trial was powerful, overwhelming, and it was riveting. She had prepared for decades for that moment.
During my testimony, I actually explained to the jurors of everything that we had to go through leading up to Bosco killing my cousin. I was able to convey to the court how the abuse that we suffered at Bosco's hands, that we witnessed, the rape that we witnessed. I also went into details of the night that Melvin was murdered, what I actually witnessed and why I believed it was Bosco.
Bosco had a distinctive odor. He was almost like he lived in a dumpster, and if you smelled that odor, you knew it was him. That odor told you who that was.
Bosco's attorneys argue that there is no physical evidence connecting him to the crime, which means there's no way for the jury to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Defense presented several witnesses, and they highlighted the misidentification of Bosco's brother.
Looking at Bosco in court, he looked unbothered. His reaction was as if he was just someone just sitting there as a bystander, no one that was on trial for murder. He didn't look like he was scared, timid, anything like that.
On January 22nd, 2013, the jury returns a verdict. They find William Bosco Lyles guilty on all charges, and a judge sentences him to life in prison without parole.
We hugged, we clapped, and celebrated afterwards. I mean, it was a joyful occasion for us. Lisa cried out, "Melvin, you got justice."
I was grateful and elated that justice was served. Well done, the City of Highland Park, Detective Paul Thomas.
It was a fantastic feeling for me to know that this case had come to a conclusion and that Bosco had been found, that Melissa and her family were going to get some resolution to the case, and that I was able to be a part of it.
Bosco's act was an act of revenge. Melissa's was an act of justice. It wasn't revenge. She could never be paid back for the loss of her childhood, the loss of her family, the loss of her security, her safety. I hope she got some closure. I don't know if she would think that she did, but I'm glad that she did get justice.
The biggest takeaway from this tragedy for me is that life is too short.
Please put on a low priority. This because it was not high priority at the time. No one has physically seen anything, just suspicion, so you don't want to rush to a scene like that.
Moments later, a more urgent call comes in.
Hello, 911. Man, where are you at? Where are you at?
He gives the address. It's the same as the first call.
What's going on?
My girl just came and my girl's bleeding to death. Please! Tina, please, keep moving, Tina. Keep moving, Tina. Tina, keep moving, Tina. Oh, Lord. Yeah, somebody call her.
Okay, we've already got police and ambulance on the way.
Now, it's concrete. You know you really got something, so now we got to step it up because someone's in danger. It's time to roll.
When the officers arrive, the male caller meets them outside. He identifies himself as Casey Anuna.
He was very distressed and was screaming for help.
I was like, man, someone stabbed my girlfriend, your apartment number.
One of the officers spots a woman ducked behind a row of cars. Then she takes off running.
You're just thinking maybe she done did something or something's going on because now you don't know.
Officer Brown was able to catch up. He sat her down on the parking lot and began asking her questions. And she immediately just responded that her roommate had been in a fight, was injured, possibly dead, and that she didn't know anything else that was going on.
KC shows a second officer to the apartment.
Officer Christy English ran inside of the apartment to check on the victim and immediately try to start giving her CPR and helping her. She had been stabbed right above the heart and the chest, and she had several other cuts in her upper torso area.
Casey identifies the victim as his girlfriend, 21-year-old Tina Stewart.
I know she's a fighter. That's one thing I knew. And sometimes, you know, they tell you pray. So I'm telling God, like, you know, make it happen.
Clantina Tina Stewart was born October 17, 1989, and raised in Memphis, Tennessee.
She was a tough little girl growing up, and that toughness carried her onto the basketball court.
She was a extremely great high school athlete, starting in the 10th grade, 11th grade.
She kind of came in late to the scene, like the basketball scene. Even though she was older than me, I still had been playing longer than her. But when she came, she was a force. Like, it was crazy. She came out of nowhere.
My senior year, you know, she was, you know, one of the top guards in Memphis. And if you're one of the top guards in Memphis, you're one of the top guards in the state. And which, you know, got her a scholarship to one of the best programs in Tennessee.
In the summer of 2008, Tina headed to Murfreesboro to begin training at Middle Tennessee State University.
The men's basketball team was in the weight room. We were lifting, working hard, and then I remember the girls' basketball team came in. We were trying to see who the new girls there, who's new on campus, and things like that. So, I mean, that's where I first initially saw Tina Stewart.
He's a basketball player for MTSU, just like Tina. They hit it off from the beginning.
We both had a passion for the same things. So, and it's kind of rare where you have a person who can share the same things.
She was a free spirit, you know? She wasn't too much, it was kind of hard to tie her down. But he gave her a little balance, because he wasn't gonna be all over the place, and she wanted to be wherever he was.
This love that we had in college, it was, it was genuine. I would say that, definitely genuine.
After 2 years of living on campus, Tina moved into an off-campus apartment. She was paired with a roommate, 18-year-old Shanterica Madden.
Shanterica was a good student, very studious. She had straight A's throughout high school. She had a full academic scholarship because she had worked so hard as a student. They probably looked at the background that they were both from Memphis and thought, this is probably going to be a good match.
Shanterica knew of Tina because she was, popular basketball, popular staple in the community as far as sports. But Tina didn't know who she was.
When it came to personality, Tina and Shanterica were opposites.
Shanterica Madden is a very sheltered, quiet, withdrawn, introverted mouse of a person. She is not someone who walks in a room and you just immediately gravitate toward, which is the exact opposite of Tina.
Tina, she had tons of friends, very outgoing person. A lot of people loved her.
After living together for a few months, the roommates discovered more differences.
Tina was really clean.
You could tell that Shanterica didn't have a lot of life experience. Like she didn't know how to, clean up a kitchen and maintain cleanliness. She was very sheltered at home.
Shanterica's housekeeping irritated Tina. But it was KC that bothered Shanterica.
Shanterica and Tina had disagreements about Tina's boyfriend, Casey Anuna, staying over.
That was a shocker because when I was over there, I was never in the areas long periods of time or, I was always trying to, I'm in the room or I'm gone, I'm out of the apartment. I wasn't trying to be in the same space as them because I understand that, this is not where I stay.
Despite the friction, Tina kept her focus on her studies and basketball.
In the spring, the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders were scheduled to play in the Sun Belt Conference women's basketball tournament.
But just 3 days before the tournament begins, KC calls 911 to report that Tina has been stabbed. Paramedics arrive.
They started doing CPR on her immediately, even though they could tell she's injured pretty bad.
As paramedics load Tina onto a stretcher, KC goes back outside to speak with police in the parking lot.
I saw the stretcher come down. I'm just like, man, I'm praying even harder now in my mind.
Police begin to establish who's who.
You got a young lady was laying there in a pool of blood.
Casey Anuna is the young man who made the call. The woman who is running from the police is Shanterica Madden.
They had no idea who she was or how she was involved.
At the beginning of an investigation, everybody is going to be a suspect.
Shortly after 7 p.m. on March 2nd, 2011, detectives with the Murfreesboro Police Department are investigating the brutal attack on college basketball star Tina Stewart.
She had a pulse, maybe a faint pulse, and they're going to keep working on her.
Tina's boyfriend, KC, and roommate, Shanterica, are on the scene when investigators get an update on her condition. They learn that shortly after Tina arrived in the ER, she succumbed to her injuries.
She was pronounced dead at the hospital.
Tina was stabbed from the front and the back. So the wound that was right above her heart is what killed her. She bled from that because it nicked some sort of artery.
The lady, the police officer, she's like, she didn't make it. I just broke down.
Both Casey and Shanterica are escorted to the station.
They take me downtown. She been taken in for questioning.
You want to separate the two and get separate statements from each person. That way you can tell what's going on, who's telling the truth.
Detectives go inside Tina's bedroom where the attack took place.
The blood was along the wall. There was blood on the floor, on the bed. It was a very messy crime scene. This was a very violent attack.
But investigators are unable to locate what caused Tina's injuries.
You're looking for any kind of weapons. You got no weapon at this time.
They spot something suspicious in the kitchen.
When they search the apartment, they find a knife block that is missing a couple of knives.
Investigators also collect Tina's phone as evidence. Other than that and the missing knives, the scene yields few clues.
This is when you gotta slow down and take all the evidence and start talking to people one-on-one.
Back at the station, detectives sit down with KC. He explains what led to his desperate 911 call.
Casey had got done with practice and he and Tina had dinner plans. He sent a few text messages and the response that he got just didn't sound like Tina.
I get a text back like I'm in the shower. I look at it and I'm just like, you know, I've been dating this girl for 3 years. It's not how she texts.
He stated that she was more emotional. She sent emojis, I love you, more lovely-dovey type stuff, to where this was more generic.
You know, I see you later, not the letter C, she's spelling it out. And this person's not texting like that. I was living with my fraternity brother, a great friend of mine, and I told him, man, I want to go over to Tina's place. I don't feel right about it, you know? And I go to her apartment complex, I touch the door handle, and I was like, you know, I knocked.
Shanterica answered the door.
I was like, is Tina here? She's like, I haven't seen her. No, she's not here, I haven't seen her. So I was like, all right.
KC tells investigators that he decided to check her room anyway.
So I walk down the hallway. In the very back room is Tina's room. The door's open, and the TV's on, but the lights are off. So I'm just like, I kind of look back, you know, and I don't hear anything. I don't look down. I don't look up. She's not on the bed. I just like, she's not in here. I just like, you know. So I walk back out, and I'm walking towards the door, and I'm like, you sure you haven't seen Tina? You know, she's like, her voice changes, like, no, I haven't seen her.
Casey made note of something he hadn't seen before.
Shanterica, he noticed she had bags and stuff packed too, and about to go out the front door.
And something tells me, like, turn around. So I turn around and I will go back to her room, and this time I turn on the lights. That's when I see Tina laying flat. So the first thing I said, we joke a lot. You know, we play. So I was like, get up, stop playing. Then I see the blood. I rush to her, I turn her over, and I see the blood everywhere. And I'm just like, my mind's everywhere. I'm trying to talk to Tina, like, hold on, fight, you know. Little to no response, but she still some life, you know. So I'm talking to her and call 911.
Shanterica heard him calling out.
She kind of had her head in the door and saying, it's not me, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. So she takes off. That's when I just kind of go towards, go after Shanterica. I don't want her to get away.
Responding officer came to the scene and saw him running after her.
Then I got downstairs and that's when I was stopped.
You're really just left with a lot of questions. You know, what exactly happened? What was the cause of all this? What went down here in this apartment?
On the night of March 2nd, 2011, police in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, are investigating the fatal stabbing of 21-year-old Tina Stewart.
Her boyfriend, KC, is being questioned, and there's no reason to think that he might have done this. He's cleared pretty early on as a suspect.
KC tells investigators that he can't think of anyone who would want to harm Tina.
Like, I knew everything about this girl, Tina Stewart. You know, she told me everything. So it's like, nah, there was no other troubles going on.
Although Casey does admit that tension between Tina and Shanterica was running high.
It was mostly about the cleanliness of, or the lack of, with Shanterica, leaving things around. You know, Tina was a very, you know, neat person. Then it was like taking things or touching things without permission as far as food, and she smelling the marijuana.
Shanterica started smoking weed in the apartment, regardless of whether Tina was there. And that was a big problem for Tina.
For Tina, since she's an athlete, she gets regular drug tests. And we learned that Shanterica is a casual marijuana user. Tina, you know, doesn't want this around her. She doesn't want to end up failing a drug test from secondhand smoke.
And she want to lose her scholarship, and she also want to be in good standing with her coach, because now, you know, if I'm a star player and I'm busted with marijuana, she might not play me, and there go my hopes and dreams.
She's just like, look, I'm not your mom, not your dad. You're in college, just don't do it in the house.
Investigators prepare to interview Shanterica. But first, they speak with an officer who says he paid a visit to the apartment just before the stabbing, at Tina's request.
He was a off-duty officer living at the apartment complex. We call him a courtesy officer. Your job is to answer any call at the complex. Loud party call, 3 in the morning, you go answer it. So he got a call from the office manager that there was somebody smoking marijuana at the apartment.
The courtesy officer made his way out there. Shanterica's asking, who called on me for this? How did you even find out about this? And Tina's coming out of her room saying, I'm the one who called.
He told Shanterica to toss out the weed, not to do that again. He didn't make a formal complaint. I think that he was just trying to calm the girls down.
Did tensions between the roommates rise even higher after Tina made the call? Investigators ask Shanterica.
I understand that apparently earlier this evening there was some sort of altercation between you and your roommate.
Shanterica says that shortly before 6 p.m., she was hanging out in the apartment with her friend Nene when the courtesy officer arrived.
I guess my roommate had called the front desk, and the front desk sent the police over. And I talked to him, and he was basically like, if he searched my room and he didn't find anything, then it'll be cleared. And if I told him the truth, so he searched, and he was like, well, you told the truth. And he said, but he's still gonna have to talk to the manager.
Already, investigators have caught Shanterica in a lie. They know that the courtesy officer found marijuana because they've already talked to him.
And after he left, I talked to Tina, which is my roommate. I talked to her. Then I knocked on her door and told her that I need to talk to her. And we talked. And it kind of got heated because we both kind of had attitude. Yeah. And she kind of shoved me, and I kind of shoved her back. And then the next thing I know, we was fighting. She kind of just slammed my head, so she was pounding my head, and I was pounding her face. And just with my hand. Okay. And then she pushed me to the ground. When she had my head, she pushed me to the ground, so I was right on the ground. And I got her. And she was like, get out of my room, get out of my room. So I left.
According to Shanterica, Nene left the apartment soon after, and Tina was right behind her.
My roommate, she was doing something. I think she was putting on her shoes because I seen her kind of roam around moving, because there's no what she was doing. And she turned down her TV, and she put on her jacket, and she walked out the door.
Shanterica says she also left.
I walked all around the parking lot, kind of because I was trying to get out the nerves out of my system. And I didn't shut the door, I just kind of shut it. I didn't lock it, I didn't bring my keys with me.
And then she said on her way out, she did notice that there was a guy hanging after we dressed that she'd never seen the complex before.
She says there's a man with dreadlocks who was in the area, who was carrying a knife.
When she returned to the apartment a little while later, the front door was open.
The door was still, it was like, wasn't closed. I kind of shut it.
The front door?
I shut the door, and it wasn't closed. It was kind of like cracked, so I just thought she came back.
She says that Tina must have come back while she was gone, and this dreadlocked man must have attacked her.
He black, he got dreads, and he kind of tall, but everybody taller than me. But he got probably like 5'6". And this is the third time I've seen him over there.
Detectives don't buy it. This whole story seems made up and really unlikely.
Now, you're at a critical point right now, all right? You're at a fork in the road, okay? And I want to help you choose the right fork. Something bad happened tonight.
But Shanterica sticks to her story.
All I know, I did not kill Tina. Tina was perfectly fine when I left.
She is very, mechanical in her movements, the way she talks, the way she responded to detectives. During the whole interview process that night with police, she might as well have been a robot.
Investigators noticed something else about her behavior.
During her interview, the whole time she's kind of using a card and kind of picking the blood off the ends of her fingers.
The fight she described having with Tina wouldn't have left blood on her hands, so where did that blood come from?
Hours after the death of Tina Stewart, Murfreesboro police interview her roommate, Shanterica Madden.
They noticed that she had been absent-mindedly picking dried blood from the tips of her fingers during the interview. They're gonna go hard on her now.
Listen to me, okay? Now, I'm gonna be straight with you, okay? And I've been doing this for a long time, okay? And you've got some marks on your face. I've been sitting here looking, it looks like your cheek might be a little bit swollen. I think what happened was you and Tina got to an argument, got to a physical fight that got a little out of hand. Another thing I find interesting is that you're right-handed, you got blood right here on the crook of your right hand.
She stuck to it for the longest, till she finally started breaking down slowly. And finally she said, well, I'm gonna tell you the truth.
When we talked about whatever it was, I turned around and was heading into my room, and I think I kind of bumped into her, and she was like, don't bump into me. And she shoved me, and I shoved her back.
The fighting escalated, and Shanterica knew she was outmatched.
She says that when she and Tina were fighting, she was scared because Tina was an athlete and much stronger than her.
I kept saying, that hurt, because my head started paining real bad. And she had a knife sitting, I think it was on the bed. So, I don't know what she was doing. I think she was cutting something. But she had a knife sitting in the bed, and I grabbed that knife after, because she still had my head down. She was pounding me on the head, and I grabbed the knife and just kind of went like this. When she was coming towards me, I kind of went like this, and I just hit her and let it up, and she fell.
She does admit that she stabbed Tina, but says, of course, that it was in self-defense.
I didn't mean for this to happen.
And the problem with the whole thing is, why didn't you call the police at that time?
I had my phone in my hand. I was like, I need to call somebody. I need to call somebody. And I was gonna go call the police. I had my phone, but I couldn't find the number that I wanted to call.
Where's the knife at now?
I don't remember. I don't remember if I dropped it or I took it outside when I went outside. I don't remember.
You remember we didn't want it to be sitting out there in that field or something and some kid get a hold of it or something like that?
I don't think so. Okay. I can't remember.
Investigators get word that officers back at the crime scene may have the answer.
A neighbor saw Shanterica around the dumpster just after this incident occurred. Police check it out. They do find a knife wrapped in a blanket that's covered with blood and is obviously their murder weapon.
This knife also matches a knife found in the apartment.
Investigators confront Shanterica with the new evidence.
They finally went to the dumpster and found the knife and the blanket. So now I got a piece of the evidence. And now I'm gonna tell Miss Madden, I have this.
Shanterica changes her story again.
She does admit that she basically just freaked out afterwards and decided to get rid of the knife in the dumpster.
She didn't call 911, but instead went to dispose of the knife. That puts another dent in her claim of self-defense because it looks like she was trying to hide what she'd done.
Meanwhile, news of Tina's death has brought the MTSU campus to its knees.
The Lady Raiders were well loved. This particular team was very well known because they were very talented and they were just very popular. This whole situation shocked everyone more than I think that anybody really understood.
Police hold a press conference to officially announce Tina's death. They also ask anyone with any information about the crime to call in.
At 6:20 p.m., Shanterica's friend, Renee Nene Reese, calls police.
Renee Reese tells police that she was there when the security officer came to the apartment and when Shanterica confronted Tina.
Renee Reese, friend to accused killer Shanterica Madden, tells investigators that she was in the apartment when an off-duty police officer was summoned by Shanterica's roommate, Tina.
And then as soon as he left, she said that Miss Madden immediately went to Tina's room, knocked on the door, and confronted her.
She says Shanterica was mad at Tina for calling the off-duty officer on her, and they started arguing, and it got heated quickly.
She said she went back into Miss Madden's room because they was arguing very loudly, and she won't be a part of it, and she could hear banging and arguing.
Renee says she also heard someone saying, "She got a knife," and "Stop, my heart hurts," or "My heart is beating," something like that. At some point, things got quiet. Then Shanterica knocked on the bedroom door and Renee let her in. Shanterica said, "We have to go." Renee saw blood on Shanterica's arm, so she asked Shanterica what happened to Tina, and Shanterica said she left. Renee says she glanced towards Tina's room.
She did say that she could see Tina's leg hanging through the doorway. So she did see it, that she was down and injured, so she knew something was wrong.
Renee says she grabbed her purse and headed for the door.
In the living room, she said she saw Shanterica holding a blanket, stuffing it in a big, clear plastic bag. As she was leaving the apartment, she saw Shanterica drop the bag and a piece of knife fell on the floor. Renee says Shanterica tried to hand her the bag.
She asked her actually to throw it away for her. She said, "No, I'm not gonna do that."
Renee left. She tells police that she placed the first call to 911.
Okay. All right. What's your name?
I don't want to say my name. I don't feel comfortable saying my name.
Shanterica tried to get her friend to help her cover up the crime. She didn't call 911. This is not looking like self-defense.
They charged her with first-degree premeditated murder.
News of Shanterica's arrest is another blow to the stunned community.
When she was officially charged, I wouldn't say it was a sign of relief. I just wanted justice to be served, you know?
Tina was a superstar in Memphis. You know, everyone knew who she was.
Investigators focus on building their case.
They know from the start that she's going to show up to court claiming self-defense, so they need to be able to counter that.
Investigators discover a series of postings on Tina's social media from the day of her death.
Before the incident, Tina was on Twitter blasting Shanterica on social media, saying that she didn't care anymore, that she was over it. She was sick of the situation.
At 5:37 p.m., Tina tweeted, "I just called the police on my roommate. I feel like a snitch, but I don't like this."
You could see where she didn't really want to tell on her. But then again, she didn't want to lose her scholarship, so she's put in a hard place. So what do? You do what you need to do.
At 5:58 p.m., Tina tweeted, "Police is here." Then, a minute later, "This gonna be too hot." And finally, her last tweet at 6:01 p.m., "I hope he finds some, please, please."
Tina saw how much she had on the line. Shanterica had everything to lose as well if her parents found out that she was doing weed. So they both had a lot to lose. It was a fire waiting to be started, honestly. Like, it just needed the right match.
Investigators speak with Tina's friend, Scooter Macklin. She tells them she was on the phone with Tina when Shanterica came in to confront her.
She asked Tina why she didn't let her know what was going on, but Tina's response was, "I had already spoken to you earlier this week about this situation being a situation and that it couldn't be one. This is what happened, this is the result." And she left the room. Like, me and Tina started back talking on the phone. She left the room for like 45 seconds, maybe a minute, and then she came back.
Miss Stewart was on the phone with Miss Backlund up to like 6:04 and the phone just connected.
And I'm calling back, but I didn't get a response. But by then, I got a text message that said, "Finna get in the shower, I'll call you right back."
By the time she gets that text, police think that Tina is bleeding out and Shanterica is trying to buy time by sending texts from her phone.
She did not try to help Tina. Instead, she tried to hide the truth about the situation.
On March 11th, 2011, 9 days after Tina Stewart was found dead, Shanterica is released on a $100,000 bond.
Shanterica didn't have any history of violence beforehand. She had never been arrested. She didn't have a juvie record.
I was the most disappointed about the fact that she was able to post bond. She posted bond and went to Memphis and went to the mall. My phone was going crazy again. Most people couldn't believe that she had the audacity to just be walking around in the world like that.
On May 9th, 2012, Shanterica Madden goes on trial for first-degree murder.
The courtroom stayed packed more than I'd ever seen it. Just overwhelming the number of people that came out to support Tina and her family. And Shanterica's family was there during the whole trial. Her mom and dad were right there in the front row behind the defense table the whole time.
Just as prosecutors anticipated, Shanterica pleads not guilty, claiming she acted in self-defense. She takes the stand to tell her version of events.
Tina confronted Shanterica and that Shanterica was acting in self-defense. and that she just happened to see the knife that was in Tina's room on the bed and then grabbed the knife. The knife was already in Tina's room because Tina had been eating a snack or something, and there was a knife on the bed. It just happened to be there. And so she used that in self-defense in the heat of the moment.
Prosecutors argue that the forensic evidence tells a different story.
The blood spatter showed that Tina had been stabbed from behind initially, and then at some point had turned around and tried to defend herself. That aligns with what the coroner found during the autopsy.
You can see on her hands she was cut, and she was trying to defend herself from being attacked.
Tina was stabbed in her back, upper torso area at one point, so that doesn't lend itself to a self-defense argument.
They also argue that the knife wasn't on Tina's bed.
Nobody had ever seen Tina leave dirty dishes or food just sitting out on the bed. That was not her personality whatsoever. She was very clean, conscientious about being clean, and she usually didn't eat in her bedroom.
As soon as she went to grab the knife, she was formulating the plan, was their argument. That she had to make a willful decision to pick up the knife and to use it.
Shantirica did not immediately call 911. She did not try to help Tina. Instead, she immediately started trying to hide evidence, knowing full well that her roommate was bleeding to death on the other side of the wall.
On May 14th, the jury reaches a verdict.
The jury found her guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. They concluded that, yes, she was guilty, but they couldn't definitively say she planned this murder.
Later at sentencing, Shantirica received 29 years in prison, 25 for the second-degree murder charge, and 4 years added onto that for the tampering with evidence charge.
29 years versus a person that's lost their life, it's not equal. It's not equal. You shouldn't be able to, she can come out and still be able to at least do something, experience something, whereas Tina can't.
I've been watching the March Madness in the Final Four. I could see my best friend being one of those coaches. You know, I could see my best friend standing out there clapping and supporting some girls and giving them an opportunity to shine and show who they are. And that's ultimately what I feel like was taken from the world.
It was sad to see a beautiful young, girl like that who had such a bright future, who overcame so much, who was the first person to go to college from her family, to die in college. That's not how it's supposed to go. That's not how the story is supposed to end. You know what I'm saying? That's just not how it's supposed to end.
Just learn to deal with it. That verdict just basically told me to get on with life. Get on with your life. Today, I'm a mother of 5. I'm married now. I'm happy. My happy ending is my babies. Finding someone that accepted me and my babies. To raise them. Destiny has never met or talked to her father.
Some days it could be hard to talk about Wesley. That's my blood, that's my cousin. Those will always be his friends, but they won't look out for him like I would look out for him.
Firefighters are there thinking they're gonna put out just a brush fire, but the closer they get to it, they start smelling the distinct odor of flesh.
We're thinking betrayal, we're thinking finances. I mean, everything from a business deal that goes bad and there's a lot of money involved.
If you can't trust your boys, who can you trust?
This is a textbook case of a revenge murder. They wanted payback.
It was December 23rd, 2005. Stephen Akins and a friend, Abdul, went to the house of his cousin, Wesley Person. All the guys had went shopping earlier that day, and they had agreed that they would meet up later on to go hang out, get some drinks.
Abdul and I show up to Wesley's place around 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. We knocked on the door, he wasn't there.
Stephen tries calling Wesley, but his cousin doesn't answer.
So we just left and went our ways.
2 more hours pass.
Abdul and I trying to really figure out, because I was sitting there like, man, it's been too long now. I know he would have texted me and said, yo, cuzzo, I'm good. I'm all right. Come pick me up or whatever. I knew he would have called me, but there wasn't. So that's around that time I started being concerned. What's going on?
Later that evening, they get a call from Wesley's live-in girlfriend, Keisha Walker. She just got to the house, and Wesley's not there.
She called us and told us, hey, his bags is here. So he was here, but I don't know when he came in, because I never got a phone call from him when he came back. But all of his bags is here, even the stuff that he bought me. We called around, asking everybody that, we could have known.
They reach out to Wesley's best friend, Justin Glover, who had given Wesley a ride home from shopping that afternoon.
Justin says, I haven't seen him either. It's just not like Wesley to go off the grid like that. And as every minute passes, the group gets more and more worried. He hasn't called his cousins, he hasn't called his friends. It's a big question as to where is this man?
Wesley Person was born in Brooklyn, New York. He and his siblings were raised by his father. His dad was a strict kind of guy, a man's man, but he was loving.
Wesley had a brother and a sister, and as far as his mom goes, the family they just don't talk about her much.
Wesley's family had strong family roots in New York. He was especially close to his cousin, Stephen Akins.
We did a lot of things together as a family. Wesley was my older cousin. He was about maybe 4 years or 3 years older than I was. So even though he was my big cousin, we both played that part of making sure that we looked out for each other. He had a great imagination and he loved a lot. He loved to see smiles on people's face, and he was a jokester.
Wesley was very quick-witted and he was very protective, and that made him very popular among his friend group in high school.
Wesley's best friends outside of the family were 2 guys he grew up with in the neighborhood, Abdul McCauley and Justin Glover.
Those 3 were close childhood friends. I'm talking elementary school, staying in each other's rooms, sleepovers, bunk bed talk, all of that good stuff.
Now, this is a tight group of guys. They did things together. They knew each other's families.
If you ever saw one of them, you saw all of them. They just stuck together in a pack.
In 2000, Wesley's crew decided to move from Brooklyn to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Lower cost of living, better job opportunities, and since these guys often made big decisions together, this was no different.
But there was only one person missing from the group, and that's the cousin, Stephen. Now, Stephen is like a brother to Wesley, so he wants his brother with him in Harrisburg.
Wesley ended up calling me and asking me, hey, there's a lot of opportunity here for you. And for real, I'm here by myself. I got my friends, but ain't nothing like actual blood family. So I took him on the offer. All right, I'm not doing nothing where I am, so why not come down there and hang out with you?
Fast forward 5 years, Wesley is settled in Harrisburg. He's comfortable, he likes his neighborhood, he's meeting new people.
He's putting down roots, he's making new friends, and one day when he was out on a walk, he met a girl named Keisha before they moved in together.
Keisha Walker was accepted as another member of the group. They all planned a trip to New York together for the 2005 Christmas season.
Wesley wanted to take Keisha home to meet the family, and it was going to be a big road trip with the whole group. You know, the Brooklyn friends are going back home to Brooklyn.
Our plan was to go to New York for Christmas, just to be able to hang out with the family, probably go watch the ball drop, and, you know, just, that's home for us. And none of that took place.
Because the day before the group was supposed to leave, Wesley has suddenly disappeared. After another 24 hours pass with no sign of Wesley, his loved ones begin to fear the worst. But no one could imagine the events that would soon unfold.
It's now Christmas Eve. It's about 1:30 in the morning, and there's a brush fire that is brewing off of I-83 in Baltimore County. It's about 70 miles south of Harrisburg. A volunteer Baltimore County firefighter, he spots this and calls it in. Baltimore County firefighters arrived there and looked down the ravine, and from that vantage point, it looked like a brush fire. But once they got closer to the smoke and the flames, they realized it was definitely not a brush fire.
They realized it's a body.
They immediately notify police.
When I arrived, firefighters were still blocking the road. The fire had been extinguished, and the body is located on this steep embankment that goes down to the riverbed, and it's in this culvert. It was a treacherous walk from the roadside down to where the body was. At this burn site, we have a tarp, construction tarp. You can smell burning of the flesh, burning of the hair. It's a very nauseating aroma that comes about. We can also begin to smell this strong odor of an accelerant, much like kerosene. And so when we get there, we realize that we have somebody who's been rolled up in a tarp and burned.
This body was freshly placed there as opposed to have been there for a few days. And then it was pretty apparent that the body had been drugged to that location.
Given the steepness of the grade, it was obvious that 2 or more people had to be involved to carry this body from the roadside over the guardrail and down this slick slope without sliding into the river themselves.
When authorities open the tarp, they see the victim's face is so severely damaged that an identification is impossible.
We could not determine if it was a male or female at that point. Some of my immediate thoughts when I'm evaluating the scene is that maybe this is a young person who overdosed at a party and kids were looking for a place to dump them, and then thinking, if we set it on fire, it'll burn it and nobody will ever know. That was a thing that happened in that time. Kids would have parties at their parents' house without the parents knowing. Somebody would die, and then they would dispose of the body.
Then, detectives notice fabric on the victim's wrists.
When we see that the wrists are actually bound, then we begin to think that there's something more foul had actually happened here.
Do you want some more? Do you want it? We need a hustle, 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 hustle. Yeah, you don't need fresh air. Yeah, let's go.
Are searching for him in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Detectives 70 miles south in Baltimore County continue investigating a burned body found off Interstate 83.
We begin to look closer at the body. And it's at this point that we begin seeing exit wounds from the victim's face. So we roll the body over, and we can now see entrance wounds from gunshots close up at the back of the head. So immediately, we all look at each other and realize we have an execution. When we had rolled the body over to be examined the back of the victim's head, we find this debris. Things that you would see from a construction site.
We saw tidbits of what we thought was drywall turned out to be plaster. We saw sawdust and I think it was even like drywall screws.
We now see a can that's in between the victim's legs. And the top is cut off and it's charred beyond belief. But it itself actually had that strong aroma of the accelerant that we had been smelling earlier while on the scene. Crime Lab comes in and they put some lights on the scene for us, and we're able to then begin looking around the scene. So we're looking for footprints in the snow. We're looking for anything that may have been discarded that could be related to it. And as we're looking around, we find what looks to be a freshly discarded cigarette lighter.
Investigators collect the evidence, and the medical examiner removes the body.
We get into the autopsy room, and as a homicide detective at that time, it was a common practice that the detective actually works alongside with the actual medical examiner during the autopsy process. We can now see that we have an African-American male who is light-skinned in color and even has a piece of jewelry, an earring, in his left earlobe.
The victim was not just burned, they were shot multiple times to the back of the head, exiting out the front, which makes it really hard to get a dental ID.
Then the next step we look at is fingerprints. So when we started to examine his hands, we could see that the ends of his fingers were burned off. They were burned down to the bone, with the exception of a couple of those digits. And on those exceptions, we found just a few slivers of skin that still maintained part of the fingerprint.
But the damage is severe, and they only ink a partial print, not enough to run through the database.
The last way that we can identify a victim, in this case, is through DNA. And so we take blood samples and other samples for toxicology and for DNA profiling that we hope to do later in the investigation.
Unfortunately, the DNA sample will help only if the victim's DNA is already in the system, or if detectives find someone to compare it to.
As we're working through this, we become perplexed with how are we going to identify this victim so that we can get more information about their background. And so I realized that as a sketch artist, I can take pictures of the victim here in the autopsy room and then later conduct a post-mortem sketch and then release that to the media in hopes that we can make an identification.
And Ken Lang was also a forensic sketch artist. And so he had done a rendering of the victim, drawing of his face, some very distinct features, such as his hairstyle, his cornrows, and there was a pretty distinct earring.
Investigators decide not to include the earring in the sketch that will be released to the public.
This would be some intimate information that only we as detectives know about this victim.
Once the sketch is completed, they were able to share it with law enforcement agencies and news organizations across the I-83 corridor. They shared it from DC, York, Pennsylvania, all the way up to Harrisburg.
We don't normally release beyond the Baltimore metro area, but we did. Knowing that we were on that I-83 corridor, we wanted to expand that search.
2 days later, they get a call from Harrisburg. That caller was Keisha Walker. She said that sketch looked like her boyfriend, Wesley Person. Only one thing. She said it didn't have the earring in his ear.
As soon as we had this information, we knew that this was probably going to be our victim, Wesley Person.
Life is all about...
Composite sketches are one of the most important investigative tools available to police, but they are only as effective as the artist's skill.
In order to complete the sketch, we as forensic artists have a lot of knowledge about the anatomical features of a face. So I look at the face, and I look at it in almost a grid-like fashion. I begin looking at where the eye sockets fall, where the nasal aperture is, where the teeth lie. I can actually take that information and then begin to fuse together the facial features of the victim and then put them into a sketch. And that's what I did in the case with this victim.
When Keisha Walker tells Baltimore police she thinks the body they found is her boyfriend, Wesley Person, Baltimore PD reaches out to their counterparts in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. A set of prints they have from a 2001 marijuana charge matches the partial print from the body. It's Wesley.
Ken and I immediately jumped in the car and headed off to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to talk to the caller.
And we end up at Wesley Person's house in Steelton, PA. And when we do, we're met with an entourage of friends.
At this point, the entire Brooklyn crew is sitting in Keisha's house. Abdul McCulley, Stephen Akins, Justin Glover, all the people who last saw Wesley alive on that day.
When we make the death notification, obviously everybody begins to cry and sob. But one person in particular, Justin Glover, becomes extremely upset at this news. Insomuch that he storms out the back of the house into the backyard and is flailing and screaming. He was really upset. So we asked him for a name and a phone number that we could put down in a report so maybe we can contact him later when he was a little bit more able to speak.
After Justin leaves, detectives begin their interviews with Wesley's girlfriend, Keisha.
They ask her, when was the last time you saw Wesley alive? And she says that it was a couple days before Christmas when he went shopping with his cousin and his friend.
According to Keisha, everything seemed normal that day. As she left for work, she saw Stephen and Abdul drive up to take Wesley to the mall for some Christmas shopping. When Keisha got home from work, she knew Wesley had returned, briefly.
She said the shopping bags were there, but Wesley was not.
After 4 days, she reported Wesley missing to police. The next day, she saw this sketch on the news. Detective's next interview is with Wesley's cousin, Stephen, who provides more details about their trip to the mall and the cash Wesley was spending.
We stopped at a few places to get clothes and shoes. Myself, Wesley, and Abdul. And the whole time I was really curious because I know that he didn't really have, a lot of money. And with that, it made me curious, like, where is, all of this money coming from? I received a phone call from Justin, and he asked where we were, and I didn't think nothing of it. He's a part of our group. So I told him, yeah, we at Sneaker Villa.
Stephen says that as they were leaving, Justin showed up in the parking lot with another friend named Lawrence Morrell.
Wesley put his clothes in the trunk. I put my bags in the trunk. After doing that, I opened up the back door and I sat inside the vehicle. They were a little distance away from where we were parked at, but there were a lot of, frustrating talk, hand gestures, but I couldn't really understand what they were saying. But just looking at the lips move and the hand gestures moving, I felt that it was an angry conversation. Wesley walked back over to the car and he ended up telling me that he's gonna ride with Justin. He grabbed his bags out the trunk and he gave me some money. He told me he would get with me later on back at the house. We drove off and I even said that to Abdul, like, man, something don't feel right. Like, I felt the energy. And that was the last time I seen him. The last time.
When police speak to Abdul, he adds a troubling detail about some dangerous activity he thinks Wesley was involved in.
He tells them about a possible scam involving a local credit union.
They would take and find a young lady who has no credit, have her make an application for a car loan that was tied into a used car lot that they had a relationship with. They would inflate the value of the car. The young lady would take the application to the bank. The bank that didn't have any procedures or policies for collecting collateral and was just issuing out these loans would then issue out the loan for this inflated price of a car. They would then issue the loan out in a series of checks, and the group would go and cash these checks.
Abdul claims that Justin, Lawrence, and Wesley would set up the scam, connect the players, and distribute the cash when it was done.
Now, it was much like a pyramid scheme. So, the further down in the pyramid you were, for each person that was a level up for you, every time you've done this transaction, you needed to pay each of these people $1,000 from the proceeds that you received.
Their plan worked perfectly until something changed one day.
Abdul Macaulay tells us Wesley had just did such a transaction with a young lady, but never paid anybody any money. So at this juncture of the investigation, we begin to see a motive. In this case, obviously, somebody was looking for revenge.
Investigating the murder of Wesley Person, detectives can't get a hold of Wesley's best friend, Justin Glover, who also seems to be avoiding his friends.
We didn't hear from him. He didn't come around us.
But his friends tell police what Justin told them before Wesley's body was found.
Justin said that after they took him home and dropped him off after he got his bags out of the vehicle, Justin and Lawrence, I'm assuming Lawrence was with him, that they left and left him in the house.
Lawrence also seems to be avoiding detectives, but they have plenty of other leads to follow up on, including Abdul's story about the fraudulent car loans.
So our next stop is the credit union. And when we meet up with the investigator at the credit union, we learn a wealth of information. We learn that this banking scheme has been going on for some time.
It was like 2 or 3 binders worth of this scheme that had been ongoing. And when she laid it out, she kind of had a high-level summary and an organizational chart of the players that were involved.
3 of the names are very familiar.
It was an arrangement with Wesley Person and Lawrence Morrell and Justin Glover to steal, to engage in this bank fraud scheme.
We also learned this was the first time Wesley did this transaction, and that he received $20,000 in all from the different checks that were cashed, and that he received it, the last payment, on December 23rd, just in time for Christmas.
A woman by the name of Karen was recruited into the scheme. She got the check, she got her cut, and Wesley pocketed the rest.
Wesley's share was nearly $20,000.
Detectives were starting to get the sense that Wesley's murder was possibly payback for him not sharing that $20,000 with the group.
If Wesley cheated Justin and Lawrence out of their cut, Their desire for revenge might have been motive for murder. To learn more about that murder, investigators turned to the evidence found with Wesley's body.
When they found the body of Wesley wrapped in that tarp, there was also like plaster and things that were associated with the construction site.
Forensic specialists determined that the material is horsehair plaster used in the 1930s and 40s, which means Wesley was most likely killed in an older home under renovation.
Now here's where it gets interesting. It turns out that Lawrence Morrell owns 5 different properties here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
They were fixing up the houses and then renting the houses. The houses were in Morrell's name.
So then we began looking at those properties. We began driving by the locations, seeing which may be occupied and which may not be.
Finally, they spot one under construction that seems to fit what they're looking for.
It's a townhome, 3 stories, dated back from the early 1900s. Has this beautiful old architecture that many of those types of buildings had.
Maybe that's our crime scene.
It's no surprise when criminals turn on each other, but it's different when it's a childhood friend.
Why was Wesley Person murdered? I think just as much as the 20,000 was the betrayal. There's a lack of respect, going behind their back. They tried to bring him into the fold and trust him in their organization. He betrayed their trust. And I think whether it was pride, whether it was the betrayal, or whether it was just flat out anger and revenge, I think his violation of their trust is what led to his murder.
Based on the construction materials found with Wesley Person's body, police obtain a search warrant for a property owned by suspect Lawrence Morrell that is being renovated.
There was pieces of plaster, holes in the wall. And the first thing we immediately noticed is that the color was the same color on the top surface of the plaster pieces we found in the small of Wesley's back. So we take samples of that and we secure that so that we can send that off for a trace analysis. There is junk and stuff galore, including rolls of tarp.
Wesley's body was rolled up in a similar tarp. When investigators search the basement, they find something even more incriminating.
In the far back corner of the basement, there's a small little cellar room with a single light bulb dangling from the ceiling. When you walk in there, the floor was still dirt. The sides of the walls were still the limestone, and you could see the rafters up above. But on the floor, plaster, wood pieces, screws.
Just like the materials found with Wesley's body.
And as I look down, I also notice a piece of round ductwork that's not quite clasped together. I saw what I thought might be blood spatter.
Authorities send the ductwork to the crime lab for further analysis. Convinced they're on the right track, detectives subpoena bank and phone records for Justin Glover and Lawrence Morrell.
They found that Justin Glover used his bank card to buy a can of Coke and some kerosene in a lighter, things that were all found at the crime scene. They also have cell phone records that place Glover and Morrell along I-83 at the same time.
We identify some significant events that occur with Lawrence Morrell's phone and with Justin Glover's phone. Both phones are hitting off of the same tower here in Harrisburg, PA, on the same date and time, right before we believe Wesley's body was transported south into Baltimore County, Maryland. We then see that Lawrence Morell's phone turns off. There is no signal activity going on with his phone and interacting with towers. Justin Glover's, that's a different story. His phone is actually pinging off of different towers because he's not very bright about what he's doing while he's committing the crime of moving this body across the state line. He's on his phone and he's talking to different people at different times. And that became important in this investigation because we could see and follow Justin Glover's journey south from Harrisburg through York, PA, into and across the state line of Maryland. We can then see him transporting back to Harrisburg, PA. And when they do, ironically, Lawrence Morell's phone comes back on. And when it comes on, Lawrence Morell's talking on his phone, Justin Glover's talking on his phone. Both phones are hitting the same tower down by the Capitol here in Harrisburg, PA. A lot of information is converging in this case. What we know at this point is that Justin Glover's phone puts him in the area of the crime at the time that the body was dumped.
Detectives now have enough evidence to obtain arrest warrants for Justin Glover and Lawrence Morell. When Justin finds out, he decides to turn himself in.
He and his attorney arrive at headquarters. Glover is stone drunk. He's so intoxicated, he pukes on the front sidewalk of headquarters. We take him into custody, take him upstairs, and he invokes his right to remain silent, says that he's not making any statements. But at that point, we can't ask him any questions.
Lawrence Morell is arrested shortly thereafter.
And when he's taken into custody, he also invokes his rights and asks for an attorney and declines to make any statements.
The suspects may not be talking, but test results on the blood found in Lawrence's basement tell investigators everything they need to know.
When they extracted that blood from that ductwork, and they conducted their analysis, they were able to create and define a DNA profile. And that DNA profile matches Wesley Person's DNA from the blood sample we took at the time of autopsy.
So the detective reached out to me and told me that they made an arrest on 2 different occasions for Lawrence and Justin. Part of me was like, we got them, you know, they're in custody. So now I need to know if they really did it. Are they gonna actually get it, you know, basically come out and confess it? Or are they gonna play this thing out to try to just take it to trial?
"24-year-old Justin Glover and 21-year-old Lawrence Morell stand accused of murdering their childhood friend, Wesley Person, for double-crossing them in a scam involving car loans.
We were convinced that we had the right people. We looked at a long investigation, a lot of circumstantial evidence, a lot of direct evidence, and it painted a pretty coherent picture for us of what had happened in this case and who was involved and who was responsible.
The 2 men go on trial in February 2008, more than 2 years after Wesley's murder.
There's always an interesting dynamic whenever you have a jury trial, and especially a murder trial. You have victims' families, you have friends, and loved ones not only of the victim, but also of the defendant. And it creates a charged atmosphere in the courtroom.
I am angry. I'm talking about angry to the point where I wanted, like, the anger was taken so far over me that I wanted to put hands on them.
These were supposed to be some of the safest people he could be with. And now they're accused of killing him.
Prosecutors lay out the evidence for the jury, painting a picture of what they believe happened when Wesley pulled off a scam and didn't pay Justin and Lawrence.
This really harkens back to some of the simplest ideas that go in the criminal justice system. There is honor among thieves. There is a code that is understood among thieves. And that code is we work together, we accomplish our job together, and we share in the proceeds together. And that honor among those thieves was broken. It was broken by Wesley Person when he did one theft on his own. They found out about it, and they took action to enforce the code.
According to the prosecution's theory, after Justin and Lawrence confronted Wesley at the mall, they took him back to his house where they made him hand over the money he'd stolen before getting back in the car.
I believe that the trust was still there to where they can drive around and go to different places without him feeling any issue of, I'm about to lose my life, until they probably got to that household that they were renovating.
They dragged Wesley to the basement. And shot him 3 times in the back of the head. To get rid of the evidence, they drove the body of one of their closest friends to a remote location and set it on fire.
Watching Justin Glover and Lawrence Morrell through that trial, I got no sense of remorse. I got no sense of empathy, no sense of shame for what they had done and what had happened. It was poker-faced throughout the whole proceeding.
Hopefully I could beat this. That's the look that they had, that I was getting from them anyway.
Imagine you're in court. You're seeing your friends on the witness stand, the ones now accused of killing your loved one, and thinking about you'll never see your cousin, who was more like a brother, again. If you can't trust your boys, who can you trust?
The defense argues that the state doesn't have enough evidence directly tying Justin Glover or Lawrence Morrell to the crime. But the jury doesn't seem convinced.
My recollection of the jury was they were really interested in hearing from Wesley Person's friends, the friends who testified about what they saw Wesley Person doing, particularly with Justin Glover and Lawrence Morrell in the days before he went missing.
The jury deliberates for over a day before they reach a verdict.
The jury returned a verdict of guilty for both defendants. They were found guilty of murder on February 19, 2008. The defendants were both sentenced to life in prison.
Despite the prosecution's attempt to keep both killers behind bars forever, Lawrence Morrell eventually gets out of his life sentence.
He was able to convince an appeals court that his attorney was ineffective, and he was granted the right to a new trial.
Rather than retrying him, prosecutors offered to let him plead guilty to third-degree murder.
Lawrence Morrell plea bargains and agrees to plead guilty for the time served.
And it was ultimately released.
What a tragedy this is, that this group of friends, all who set out from Brooklyn, New York, who wanted a better way of life, they come to Harrisburg, establish their roots, but then money becomes more important than their friendship.
This is a textbook case of a revenge murder. They wanted payback. You cannot mess with people's money and expect everything to work out okay. That $20,000 possibly cost Wesley his life.